Singh. He is currently working in MasterCard's AI Garage and has been an active member in writing research papers. To you, sir.
Okay, so yeah, hello everyone. Good afternoon. So I would like to thank first of all the Student Counseling Services for inviting me to give a talk on this. So as you all know, today we'll be discussing about how to write research papers in general. This would be in general if you want to independent research or probably in collaboration with the professor, it could help in that, as well as give you ideas as to how to think about ideas for your exploratory projects or your BTech projects or stream projects, and also if you want to convert that into a research paper, then what should be the general path you follow, and what should be how should it differ from normal projects in general. So I'll start. 1 minute. Yep.
So,
So yeah.
Sir, I would just give an introduction. In this session, we'll be going on a sequence of processes which will be useful for your understanding. This curated path, led by Shreyansh Singh, would be quite helpful for each and every one of you who is aspiring to write a research paper. In order to maintain the flow of the session, we would encourage you all to make your doubts up in the chat box. That would be taken after the session in the Q&A. We should start with the first set of questions. First being the basic one. What is a research paper? Why would it fit for a BTech student focusing on core or non-core jobs?
Right. So in general, what I would say is a research paper can be like any document that would present some kind of a learning or perhaps some kind of an analysis or a problem that you posed and also solved in that document. And the main key point I would say is that the originality factor should be there. I mean, you can always find work being done on a topic, but why would your paper get accepted or in general be published at any conference or a journal? So, I mean, it has to have some kind of an originality to it. You should be presenting something to the academic world which makes an impact, makes whoever reads your paper should gain some understanding of the topic and also get to understand the problem, and as well as fully understand what kind of solution you're giving. Yeah, so I mean that would be a general idea behind research papers. And if you consider from a job perspective, especially on the BTech level, so I would say a few years back, writing research papers at a bachelor's or undergraduate level was not that common. People used to think that, I mean, you can do that when you go for a master's or a PhD, or in general, it's not important for a job. So I would say in general, if you are applying for a non-core job or for a computer science software engineering based role, it still isn't very, very relevant. If you have it, then it's a good point. I mean, if the interviewer is associated with that area, then he can probably ask you a few questions on that, and then it can also help in having more things to discuss in the interview rather than simple problem solving. So it can help your resume to get shortlist or spark interest in the interviewer's mind regarding since you have not simply done what was required for the interview preparation process or your general coursework, you went a mile extra, right? But I mean, still it won't be very, very impactful if you're focusing on a very, very purely a software role. But if you are interested in companies which have research roles associated with them, for example, say Adobe Research, Samsung Research, and there are many companies coming up who were primarily very software driven or hired only for software roles, but now slowly they are coming up for roles in the research domain as well. And perhaps in the general software role, they also accept some kind of research acumen or that kind of mindset. So I mean, for those roles, definitely in the non-core jobs, it can help. And if you want to go for higher studies, then definitely you should dabble about writing a research paper. Main reason is in the past, GRE used to be a factor, and us specifically the Indians who are very strong analytically and those kind of skills. So we usually used to score a lot of score high marks in GRE, and then our profile used to kind of get a good it would be good for the the reviewers of those institutions who used to review your profile. But in due to the COVID and all of those situations, many colleges have waived off the GRE process, and most of the good ones especially. So what you want, so the entire focus now is on your profile basically. I mean, the LORs and the SOPs will definitely matter for sure, but your resume and your profile will definitely be very, very important. So what I would say is like if you have a research paper, then it will. I mean, now many people are doing at an undergraduate level, but it will still separate you out from the crowd. I mean, many people are still not. I mean, if you see, like most of the students are still not writing research papers at undergraduate level. So if you do manage to get even one successful paper, then it will kind of separate you from the lot. So I mean, for higher studies, it can definitely help. And if you are like targeting a core job, if you are in some kind of a like a mechanical or any kind of metallurgy or any kind of a department in which like there are companies, good companies in which you want to get into the core like whatever you're studying. So in that, having a research paper shows that you are actually interested in your subject. You have gained knowledge not just from the curriculum, but you have like it may not be like for everything. I mean, when you write a research paper, it will only be for like one specific topic, but it will show that you had the potential, you had the energy to kind of go deep into that topic and kind of do some kind of an original contribution in the field. So I mean that speaks out a lot. So definitely for core jobs, I would say the research papers do have like a huge importance there. Yeah. So yeah.
Some wise words from the sir. So if one has decided to write a research paper, there are many domains which are present for study on how would a student, a BTech student who is actually having not much idea of the outer world, would know what topics to go after. What are your some personal best resources in order to do the same?
Sure. So what I would say is like in general, explore whatever field you want to work in. So I mean, the best way is to like do it in your field as well, like the BTech, whatever you're doing your BTech in. That's the best way. I mean, because you have studied the courses, you have some idea of the courses, right? And if you want to say do it for some mainly like many people are attracted to the computer science uh, topics in general because like they're getting a lot of attraction from the news and from various companies and all of that, from the startups and all of that. So I mean you can, so it can, so what I would say is like the topic you can choose for your research paper would mainly depend on your interest, that is for sure. And it can be like either based on your curiosity, like you want to work on something challenging that you have seeing is becoming very very popular, but you don't know much about it and you really want to, or it can be like if you are working on your department and you have interacted with professors or masters or PhD students, and then or even studied a course, say, so you may have some prior experience in that topic, and then you want to write a research paper on that topic. So I would say the curiosity thing, you have to really be very careful before like going into the research direction, because I mean curiosity may die down after a while, and it's not a bad thing. I mean you can still start off with the hope that you want to write a research paper and probably not end up writing research paper. That's not a problem at all. But I would say like if it's just curiosity driven, then it would like take much more efforts from your end, because I mean since you won't have the required knowledge, so you'll have to first work on getting that knowledge part. So you'll have to read up blogs, you'll have to read up the basic papers which are there in that field, and then probably kind of identify what you want to work on and then start working on it. So, but yeah, I mean, the interest would definitely play a major role, because I mean, if you're not interested enough, so research is not just like a simple project. I mean, you can do many projects even if you're on a topic, if you're even if you're not interested in it. Many people do in our college, but I mean, uh, but getting a research paper would definitely want you to go an extra mile. You would want to like have some kind of an original contribution in the field, and as you can like imagine also, so that would take much more like with patience as well as determination and all of those things, right? I mean you have to study a lot and like get some kind of an impactful thing out of it. So yeah, so play on your interest, that would be the main thing. And whenever you want to go into a topic, like consult your professors. I mean, the best way I would say, like thinking of topics on your own is difficult. I mean, you can like as I'm also showing here, see here are some topics which you can actually go after. So if you like, I am from a computer science department, so like I have more idea in that field. So if you are like targeting for non-core, or if people are in computer science, electronics, electrical departments, and they want to like work on something which is like very popular right now, so I mean they can definitely go for the machine learning, NLP, computer vision, reinforcement learning, those kind of topics. Definitely, if you're interested in security, I was interested in security. I did my kind of BTP and like kind of the intersection of like security and machine learning. So I mean, if you're interested in like pure security or cryptography, you can also try out that. Computer networks and operating systems, those usually have like a lower interest in, especially in the BTech, in the undergraduate level, because I mean those are very difficult to do research in. Most of the work has already been done, and it's difficult to find areas and difficult also to find professors and the required infrastructure to kind of work on that. But I mean, still you can do that. Information retrieval is also like a course that IITBHU provides, and that can also that's also very popular area. You can get into that. And for the core, I would say I mean, you would know better what are the general problems the community in your like the department, the folks working in that field face, and then you can kind of like try to work with your professor on finding some specific topic to work on, and then always like work more on that. But I mean, still, like as I said, the interest should be the main factor governing this, and not just kind of any kind of peer pressure or like you seeing it in the news and you want to go after it. I mean, it won't lead to success. You can always like study. That's not an issue. If you're seeing like things in the news are getting popular, you can kind of go and study that in as much depth as possible. That will be of no harm. But I mean, yeah, the interest should definitely be there and not kind of a pressure thing there. As for like what I consider good resources to kind of look into topics or like understand what topics are like actually becoming popular right now. So I mean, obviously, like if you have an idea of the topic you want to get into, so you can just Google it. I mean, what are the top trends in say natural language processing, and then you'll get many blogs, and then you can read that. And obviously, it requires some kind of a bit of like research. You'll have to go through many links and then find out. But if someone is like just starting out and he has no idea of what fields he could work in, or like what are the general areas people publish papers in, so I would suggest like if you just head to simple archive. I mean, if you have like studied research papers in general, if you have like search for any research paper online, archive must have been the website which you have gone through. If not, then it will be like whenever you're doing your BTP and all of those things, you'll definitely go to this website and refer research papers from this website. So, but if you just go to archive.org and not open any pages, specific papers, right? So, I mean, you'll get a lot of topics. I mean, in physics, you'll have, like, as the screenshot shows, you'll have a lot of topics on physics, and then there are computer science, biology, and there like it's divided into multiple topics as well. Like, so for machine learning, there is a specific page dedicated to machine learning. There's a specific page dedicated to cryptography. Then again, like if since like machine learning is still very broad, and that usually includes more of the like the original statistical type of techniques. But there's obviously neural networks and all. People do put it under machine learning. So I mean, you can also go into the computer vision and the like the natural language processing, and you can just, what you can do is like, the goal of referring to archive is just go through the titles, or perhaps if you are interested, go through the abstracts of the papers, right? And then just kind of get a feel of like what is trending, like what people are doing. Even if you don't open the papers, you can just scroll through the names of the titles, and then kind of get an idea what the field is moving into, what are some of the interesting things. And after this, what I would say is, I mean, this is just like a initial survey part which you can do as to like what if you have no idea as to what to get into, you can just use this to kind of get an idea of the different fields out there. And what I would suggest, like after this, what should be your next step is, after you've, I'd say, identified that I want to work in natural language processing, and I want to say work in, and on the natural language processing, you saw like some papers on language models, or say natural language generation. So you want to like get more knowledge on that, right? I mean, so I would suggest don't read research papers, like the latest research papers on language modeling if you're just starting out. Then you'll be like lost, you won't understand a thing, and then you'll be kind of get into the web of like the different papers they are citing, and then you'll just be opening tabs and like not completing them. So what I would suggest is like just do a Google search, like natural language processing and language modeling in natural language processing, say, and then you'll get multiple blogs. And then what you can do is like go through the blogs, and blogs people write it in a manner which is like very easy to understand. It's not like does not have the like the complicated stuff as the research papers will have. They will have less of mathematics, so initially it would be helpful to kind of do that. And this is not just for machine learning or any specific kind of thing. It's generic for any topic you want, right? I mean, it's just that this resources for computer science and related fields is a bit more abundant than the other ones. But I mean, if you search, then you can find it on anything. People are doing research in all the fields, right? And so yeah, so you can find blogs, and there are also thing called like survey papers. So what survey papers do is that they don't present an original. They are also kind of research papers. I mean, you can work on survey papers as well. So what they do is they don't have like a specific goal, or in the sense that they don't have a specific problem that they're solving. So what they do is like they will like, for example, language modeling, and then they will deep dive into like a specific kind of language models, say some type, some category of language models. And what they will do is they will try to get like combine all the papers that there were from history, like say from the 1960s or like whenever the field started, and they will kind of very in a very interesting and like a very easy to read way, they will kind of show like first this paper came out, this use this technique to kind of to accomplish this target, and then this paper came out, this did this, and in very short, like 2 to 3 lines, they will explain each paper, and they will tell you what were the advantages, disadvantages of those papers, and why this like the transition from this paper to this paper happened. So I mean, so reading this kind of a paper on the topic you're interested in will give you like a complete mind map of what you want to get into and what you are getting into, if you actually want to get into the research in that field. And then I would say like read a couple of papers which were in the initial phase, right? The very initial papers that came out. Then we'll kind of get a feel of like how the field started and what's the general idea that the authors in this field are trying to accomplish. And then what I would suggest is like, I mean, if you can do that, but obviously very time taking, you can't read all the papers in the field. So I would suggest that then you can like try to read papers which are like 3 to 4 years back in that field, and then you'll like kind of gain more information as to how the field has progressed over the years. And still, if you find difficulty in understanding some papers, they always refer other papers from which they're deriving the idea, so you can look into those papers as well. I mean, I understand that it's like a very very elaborate process, but I mean the starting point, starting phase, and whenever you are in the knowledge gaining phase, that definitely takes up a lot of time. So that is there for sure. And as for like what I personally do, I mean, so this is it, right? I mean, archive is usually what I do to kind of remain updated with what the current research trends are going, in which direction they are going. And usually, like apart from, I mean, in general, like from work, I mean, you can have areas that you are working on, so it becomes very easy to like kind of work in that area. But if you want to like say do independent research, or if you're in a college and don't have a particular direction, so obviously you can take the help of archive and in general other blogs as well, as I said, and try to get ideas as to what the field is going into, and then read survey papers, read blogs, and gain more information. So I mean, yeah, I mean that would be typically the process in which you could like think of a topic and like start reading and working on that. Yeah.
Okay, so now our students have decided why they want to do research. They have decided what topic to go after.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any kind of structure that should be followed while writing the paper?
Yeah, so I mean, this would actually be like the most important part, I would say. So, like, after you have identified your topic, after you know what you want to get into, and like perhaps you have also done the kind of work required on that research, right? So, what I would say is, I mean, I'll go through each of these. So, I mean, the first, I'll go through the different sections in the research paper, and then I'll also explain kind of like how to write this and what things you should keep in mind. So, I mean, the first section in any research paper is the abstract and the introduction part. So, what abstract and the introduction are mainly intended for is like, I mean, this will be the first thing that any reader or a reviewer, who, when you submit to a conference or a journal, so this will be the first thing that any reader or reviewer would read, right? So, what you want to do is like make this section very interesting and very compelling, as to like whenever a reader reads it, he should get an idea of what exactly the problem statement you're trying to solve, as well as like how your solution is better and different than the existing solutions out there. Uh, and like after the just reading the introduction, even if the person does not read the entire paper, he may not know how you solve the problem, but what you are solving and why you are solving should be very, very clear. So the what and why part is the main crux of what should be there in the introduction. And obviously you should write it in a very I mean easy to read way. So writing is definitely a skill you'll have to develop, and it kind of happens like in the process as well. But still, I mean, it can't be like broken at places. The story should kind of develop very, very well. Like if from the abstract, person should get some idea as to what your work is on, and after he reads the introduction, he should get a brief overall idea of like what algorithm you're using, what, or if not, like what is the approach in general, like high level approach you're using, and I would say like, and as I said, like the problem statement you're solving, and like how is it like helping, and how is it like different from the existing solutions out there. right? So I mean, the motivation of the problem is the key to abstract introduction, and that should be very, very clear in your mind as well. I mean, your goal should not be to like, I take an algorithm which was existing and I kind of replace the core part of the algorithm with a newer algorithm which works better, and I would say like the entire pipeline now is better, right? I mean, that is okay. It can work in like some of the lower level conferences. If you submit, you could probably get it accepted, but that's not a like a very good approach to research, right? I mean, that's not exactly a problem you're solving. I mean, if you, doing that actually helps, not just in like, say for machine learning, does not just help in the accuracy of something, but it does solve like more problems than just the accuracy, then definitely it's a good thing. But I mean, you just can't have like a single goal in mind, like I want to increase the accuracy, I'll just change from, say, like in NLP you'll change from LSTMs to transformers, and then you'll say like the work is like very, very good. I mean, that is like in research in some sense it's a research, but definitely not a very good piece of research, I would say, because I mean, you're not solving and obviously like when you write the abstract introduction, right, so you will see that the entire process can be described in one line. Like you want your paper to be something like, if you want to summarize it, it should take about 3 to 4 lines as to what's the complexity associated with the problem you are dealing with, and like when you solved it, so what was the actual impact that you are creating. And like just simply replacing an algorithm is like not at all very, very impactful. um, and these days, as like I have also seen my BTech project and everything, right, so the quality of research even in the BTP and everything that the professors are expecting is a bit more than that. I mean, you can say that 5 to 6 years back it would be simply like replacing an algorithm and it would work and people would be happy, but right now the viva and everything they take, they actually want some impactful work being done. And obviously you get 3 to 4 months easily working on the project in the semester. So even if you're not aiming for a research paper, I would say the goal and what work were you doing, like just for writing the report for the BTP, should be very clear, and the project structure should be very clear in your head, and it should actually be some kind of an impact or something novel, I would say. So yeah, and then if we move to the next section, which would be the related work. So what happens in related work is that after the abstract introduction are done, right? So you have to kind of summarize what is the current progress in this field, like what like if you are targeting a specific problem, so you may not, like if you're targeting a specific problem in NLP, you don't have to mention all the papers in NLP, like this was doing this and this was doing that. You have to mention all the papers who are working on that specific topic. And that is, I would say related work is easy in the sense that you would be doing this process even before you do the entire project, because as I said, you will have to do a prior research on what is the existing work out there, what algorithms they were using, what gaps were there in those algorithms. So you'll have to kind of, would have done all of this, and the best process is like kind of make notes while you're reading all of those research papers during the initial preparation phase, and then directly port them into your research paper, right, when you're writing it. So you can simply say that this algorithm was used in this thing, and then this were the gaps associated. I mean, obviously you won't have to write 3 to 4 lines about each paper and the related work, but I mean, you can just add one liner like this was a problem associated, and then to solve this some other paper was presented, and that would, all of this would have been done when you are like preparing for your research, like the entire project. And then and after, like, so you'll include the advantages and disadvantages of like the papers you're presenting, obviously not for all of the papers, but for the key papers which you found it while doing your prior work study. So you'll include like what were the advantages and disadvantages of those methods, and yeah, in general, the survey of the existing methods. This is usually like a very easy section, and what reviewers tend to like look for in this section is that you must have done a comprehensive study of the work. You shouldn't have left out the papers in the last 1 or 2 years, which would be perhaps the most impactful papers, because I mean, obviously the compute and everything is increasing, so people are doing more interesting work recently. So you don't want to like miss out on the related work, especially of the newer period. If in the past, you can obviously, I'll have to like leave out papers because I mean there's also space crunch and all of that. So yeah, and that's about related work. And then the method, right? So after you have got the attention of the reviewers and the readers from the abstract and introduction, so the next thing they would be interested in, like after the what and why, they would be interested in the how. So like how are you solving the problem that you described? And so yeah, so I mean this, and since like in our mind, especially at the undergraduate level, what happens is that we have a story in our mind, right? I mean, we have this problem, we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this, and this happens. So it's very empirical in that sense, like experimentally we see that everything is happening, so it's all right. But even if you do that, I mean, that's not the wrong thing in the initial level. It has to happen like that. You cannot come up with like entire novel algorithms in your undergraduate. This is very rare and not expected at all, like at that stage. So, but still, like even if you have a like a very process based or like a flow based idea in your head, so what you should try is kind of uh, convert that into like very scientific and mathematical statements. You can have equations for things which like they're very intuitive to your head, but if you write it in a form of an equation, it gives a good feel to the paper as well. Like it looks like you have written something concrete, as well as for the academics out there, right? I mean, they won't understand like your English if you write the entire idea in English. Probably there may be a language barrier. Everybody won't be so comfortable in English. So, but if you write in mathematics, then everybody would understand, right? And obviously you try to use as much scientific language as possible. Don't try to write it in a very like lenient form of English. Write it in a very formal style. Write it in a manner where if any person of any like obviously you can expect people will be familiar with your work, so I won't say like write in layman terms, but it should be for the academic community, for the scientific community, it should be in a way that they easily get to understand what your idea is. So in general, the writing the method section, writing it could be difficult, but I mean just the section is not very difficult because that's the entire core project, right? I mean, what you have done in the entire 3 to 4 month period is the method basically. So I mean, in general, like putting it onto the paper won't be a very difficult task. Obviously, like writing in a good way will be a task, but it won't like require any additional efforts apart from the work you have already done. um, okay, so now we move on to the experiment section, right? So after you have described what your method is, you want to give like what are the experiments you have done. So experiments would be like you must have like when you define the problem, you should have a goal in mind, like you have to improve this metric, or if it's like a metric which should be reduced, then you have to reduce that metric or something of that sort, right? So in this section, what we'll do is simply like do all of the describe what was the experimentation process. Like you took the algorithm, what data set did you test it on, or like if it's not a machine learning thing, so what kind of data did you test it on? If it's an algorithm, say you're doing working in theoretical computer science, you proposed an algorithm, say. So you want to explain like what data goes into the model, what into the algorithm, what comes out of it, and then perhaps like having a like a architecture diagram of the entire process, the entire flow is very very helpful. You want to have that. And then like if in a machine learning setting, so you will also want to fix upon like what were the hyperparameters you're using, and like what was the hardware, like if you're using a GPU, so what kind of a GPU were you using. In general, like if you're working on something like cryptographies, then you can have say like what was the time complexity of the method. So all of the things which are related to their experiment, your method, as well as the like, and also like one more thing, like what time it took to execute the complete flow of the algorithm. So I mean, all of those details you can include in your experiment section. And also like you have to, and also like when you're proposing a method, you have to choose algorithms which you are comparing it against, and these will typically be the algorithms which are there in your related work, and those should be the ones which are very recent, right? And then you want to kind of show that I was trying to solve this problem, all of these algorithms exist, they claim that they can solve this problem, but our algorithm works better in this metric, and solves this problem better than all the other algorithms, right? So and the important thing here is like whatever algorithms you're choosing should be recent and should be strong. I mean, if you are using like weak algorithms just to prove that your algorithm is better, and that is a very big red flag. I mean, people will identify that you have obviously used algorithms which were very old or which did not perform well on this kind of data, and you just used it just to show that your algorithm was better. So I mean, that is a big red flag. Don't do that. Um, uh, I mean, this kind of efforts that usually like lead to very easily a rejection. I mean, people won't even see like the rest of the paper and things like that. So don't do that. Use strong algorithms, and those are called baseline algorithms, which you compare your algorithm against. So use strong algorithms there, and yeah, I mean, you just present like whatever the and for if you like using some kind of data for your model, use the exact same kind of data and exact same kind of procedure of giving the data and taking the output for the other algorithms as well. So try to maintain as much homogeneity as possible in the experiment section, and that is appreciated. Yeah. Then finally come to, like, it's not the last section, but it's like the most important section which you can do from the project perspective. So that would be the results and the conclusion. So what you will have to do is, like, after you have shown your results from the experiments, right, you'll have to show them in a tabular form for the metrics which you are targeting. So you will show that like if it's machine learning and simple, say, accuracy based problem, right? So we'll say that my algorithm gives a better accuracy on this task than the other algorithms, and it will basically show your effectiveness. You will probably show some visual kind of things to show. I mean, you can include that in experiments or the results, some graphs or something to show that how it is better, and then also the thing is, like, there can be trade-offs, right? I mean, no algorithm is perfect. You can't have the best algorithm and, like, expect that people hadn't even thought of it before. So I mean, if your algorithm is doing very, very good in some aspects, obviously, like, if it's having a very high accuracy, it may be possible the time complexity was pretty high. So I won't say, like, highlight it in a very glaring way. I mean, that would obviously be a negative thing for your paper, but obviously try to include that as well. I mean, you don't want to give any false like false assumptions to the reader, and the experienced reviewers can sense that. I mean, if you shy away from writing the trade-offs, they will understand that obviously, since they haven't even ventured into that thing, probably there was some issues there and they didn't want to write it. So you can see, I mean, since, like, research papers in general have a page limit as well, so you can see if you have space, and it's a good practice to, like, also kind of show the trade-offs, like, it was performing well here, but in these kind of tests it was not performing the worst. I mean, that would also be very good, but it's like some algorithms are performing better than that, but okay, since you're doing good in that, so this is kind of expected, or this would do something like that. So you'll have to make your arguments in a very smart way, as to not show that your algorithm is not any good, but also, like, I mean, it is obvious or anything like of the sort that this has a very good impact on the problem I'm solving, and the on some metrics, if it has a lower result, then it's not of a big deal or something like that. You have to show it in that manner. Yeah, and then I would say, like, in the end, you will include your summary and the future work. So what the summary would typically be is you'll simply like kind of have a 3 to 4 liner on what was the, like, in short, what was the problems you suggested and what was the solution you suggested, and you can kind of say that it performs better than this kind of models, and then this will be like a very short summary of your work. You can like have like some 1 or 2 keywords which would explain, like, what was the idea behind the algorithm you said you mentioned in the paper. So even if a person reads the summary, he'll kind of get a, like, I would say, like, if a person wants to get an idea of the paper, he should if he reads the abstract, introduction, and the summary, he should get the idea of your paper. So kind of focus on those sections as well. I mean, you may think that the method and or the experiment section is the most important, but that is actually not the case. The abstract and introduction matter a lot, because that's the first thing people are seeing, and the reviewers are seeing, and that should actually spark the interest. You cannot just have a goal of just, I'll increase the accuracy by 1 or 2%, and then I'll claim that this is a very good research paper. I mean, the results come in the very end of the paper, and that is also not of very high importance to the reviewers. What they actually want is some kind of a novel like contribution to the field, and like increasing an accuracy is not a novel contribution to the field. You should be proposing something which actually makes sense and people can kind of work on it, right? And that is what you include in a future work as well. You say that okay, so I've presented this could be some of the things I could have done. Say probably you tested on some kind of data, and you think that it could work on some other kind of data, but you don't want to test it, or there is a space crunch and you didn't have the time to do it. Obviously you cannot do everything, so you can mention in the future work that okay, so it worked on this kind of data. We can try to make it work on that kind of data. You're not sure about the result. It may not work well there, but I mean, you can mention it there. And then you can say that since this was an improvement we suggested, perhaps these are some more improvements that we can do. We are working on it, and then probably the research community can work on it as well. So I mean, this is the kind of the way you will like frame your future work. And yeah, I mean, I would say like the most important sections you have to focus on, like this is the abstract introduction. That would be the very most important thing you focus on. And then the method in the experiment section. As I said, you have to choose strong algorithms, do your training and everything process in a very homogeneous way as for all the algorithms. And then lastly, focus a lot on the summary and future work section as well. As I said, like in the results, conclusion, and the summary work as well, like to basically kind of give a good shape to your paper and show that your paper actually has impact, and like what you are claiming in the introduction verbally, that it shows impact and it is an improvement over algorithms. You have kind of also showed it in terms of numbers, and also given reasoning as to why you think it is better. Like not giving reason, just saying the accuracy is better, that is also not a good thing. You want to actually show that the reason we did this all of this actually resulted in the improvement in accuracy, and it was not just a fluke. And we have proper logic as to why it is resulting in that improvement. And I mean that will also help, because I mean everybody can't like go into an algorithm or see your code and like verify the mathematical validity of like why it is working. So it's better if you can provide that and tell them that, okay, so this was the reason I suggested this algorithm, and this was the reason it's also showing improvement in the results. So yeah, I mean this would, I would say, is like my 2 to 3 years of experience condensed into like one small slide. And the ideas I suggested like can actually like help you like draft a good research paper. Yeah.
So right, so we have seen the structure that should be followed while writing a research paper. Plagiarism can be one of the more bigger challenges that you could face while writing a research paper. How do you make sure that your paper remains free of it?
Yeah, so what I've seen is like, especially in the undergraduate level, the fear of plagiarism is pretty high, mainly because that is pretty understandable. Like I had this at my stage as well. I mean, what we don't have that much free time, obviously. I mean, we have courses and all of that, and we are also like very not very intellectually strong as to what the top researchers are doing in this field. So it happens like whenever we read a paper or we go through some 2 to 3 papers, we feel that, okay, so this is like kind of what I want to work in. So I'll just try to get the same idea from there, improve on a certain aspects, and then write a paper. But what happens is like obviously you should take ideas from papers, right? And you should take ideas from papers. You should take whatever information that the paper is providing, but don't copy at all like from the papers. You don't want to like simply do a control C control V or even paraphrasing, right? I mean it's easily it can easily, for people who are experienced in the field, who will be seeing your research papers, and even like these days our professors also like have a very keen eye for plagiarism. So you don't want to like take a paper and just rephrase it and then say that this was your work. And this is like a very wrong thing to do in the academic community. If you submit a paper and say it has a plagiarism of like say more than 25-30%, so I mean that is not at all appreciated, and it's like it can hamper your reputation. I mean obviously you don't have a reputation, but the in the academic world, but in the professor you're working with, I mean that can he can like suffer a bit from the mistake you did on like copying the paper. He didn't see it while he was reviewing your paper, and then he told you, okay, you can go ahead and submit, and then you did this and you copied from somewhere, and then basically people caught it and then reported it, and then it will make a huge mess. So basically, like, don't copy from existing papers. Use their ideas and try to work on it and write it in your own manner. And then also I would say, like, if you think like if you read a research paper and like you're trying to just copy it, then that actually doesn't make sense for a research paper, because you want to contribute something original, right? So so simply copying is not at all a good idea. And then some people say like, if can we like copy figures and diagrams on papers? So what I would say is, like, as much as possible, don't try to do that. If it's like a diagram which is very very unique, and you have seen papers copying that diagram from that paper, and that paper is like kind of a very seminal paper and very impactful paper in the history of your field, so you can probably do that. But in general, I would suggest like try to recreate that diagram. If it's an architecture diagram, you can say that this author's proposing this kind of an architecture. So don't copy the architecture from that PDF, right? Make the architecture yourself by yourself, and cite the paper that we have taken this idea is from this paper, and properly provide a reference and cite that paper. And in general, when, as I said, like you can take information from other papers. So when you do that, always cite the paper. Don't shy away from citing papers, because that actually I mean, that is the right thing to do. You cannot claim someone else's idea. It's not illegal, but I mean, it's a very wrong practice. When you claim someone else's idea to be your own idea. The idea of research being like open and for everybody to read does not mean that you can straight away copy without giving them credit, right? And in general, in academia, research papers and the citations which people get when you refer their papers is actually a very important I would say currency for them, because I mean that shows how impactful their papers were. So you don't want to like do that. And if they later they perhaps go through your paper, if it was very interesting, and then they see like you copied this information but you didn't cite them, then obviously they can reach out to you, and then all sorts of things could happen. And yeah, and also the third thing, like if you make any assumptions, right? So I mean, in my current work, I was working on some fraud-based models to capture transaction frauds and all of that. So if you say that, okay, so fraud is a very big problem, and in the past 5 years, around this many $1 billion of transaction losses have happened. So one thing, like if you should mention numbers, you shouldn't say like huge losses have happened. Try to quantify numbers, and this is like a general practice for research papers. And okay, so and if you read from somewhere that $25 billion have been lost, say in 1 year or whatever is the number, so what you want is that you want to cite that source and ensure that the source is actually a very reputed source. If it's a news article, then Forbes or something like that, it should be from a very reputed source. And if it's a research paper, then it's well and good. I mean, you can just cite the paper and say that in this paper they said that the losses were amounted to this much. Don't make assumptions and just write any number which was on your head, because I mean, people will again say that you have not done the required prior study and haven't included the resource as to where you got this information from. So again, that is also not a good thing. So in general, the idea is reference as much as possible. Don't copy. And in general, I would say, like if you do get a plagiarism checker. So in general, for conferences, 15, I mean, they don't allow for more than 20% plagiarism. Many conferences may not check that, but I mean, if they do get a suspicion that there is some kind of plagiarism, then they definitely would, and you don't want to get caught in that. So ensure that the plagiarism is, perhaps best case would be less than 15, but yeah, we can do less than 20, and don't try to exceed from that. Yeah, that's the general idea. I would say, like, and then for there are many websites, right, which you can check your the plagiarism score from. And I would say there are many free websites which I've kind of mentioned here, but like these are not very much tuned for academic research. I mean, these will search for similarity in sources which are like not the academic papers. The first one I've mentioned, the bibme.org, that actually uses some research paper, like sources from research papers, to kind of check for plagiarism. But the others two, I don't think they do. I haven't used them much, but yeah, I mean, I don't think they do. So they will give you a general sources, like if it's a very popular essay or research article, then they will definitely highlight it for you. But it won't be like a perfect sure shot score as for the plagiarism thing. But I mean, you will get a good idea. If it's like you have copied a lot, then you'll definitely see it in this, and you should definitely try to reduce it. And in general, like if you're writing it originally, then you don't have to worry about plagiarism. It definitely won't be coming in. And then there are some paid websites. There's Turnitin, there's Authenticate, then also there's a cross-check by IEEE. So these three are very, very good, and these are like actually accepted. I mean, if some conferences do require like a plagiarism report as well. So I mean, these three are kind of the ones which are accepted by conferences in general. And yeah, I mean, but these are actually paid. So I mean, I assume like you won't be having access to these. But like in our college, many professors have like they have PhDs and master students working in their labs. So I mean, many of them have actually taken access to these. So you can obviously reach out to your professors and kind of get your paper scored if you're like have finally decided to publish it and send it to a conference. Yeah.
So we have written the paper, we have checked the plagiarism, the paper is nearly over. What would be the next step? The publication, what do you need in order to make your paper be highlighted?
Right. So yeah, from an approval standpoint, I won't say like in colleges there is any kind of specific approval you need. In companies, definitely there are procedures you have to go through. their privacy concerns and whatnot. But I mean, in colleges, there's no specific thing. One thing you have to ensure is like if you're using an external data set, you have to ensure that there's a proper license associated with that data. That is like free to use and everything. You don't want to use some kind of proprietary data, even if you did get a hand of it. But yeah, I mean, that's just one thing you have to check, and you can do that very initially in the process when you just took the data. And apart from that, there's no specific kind of an approval you need. You can just contact a professor and tell them that I want to submit to some conference, and probably they are aware of conferences, right? So they can suggest you which would be the best conference you can submit to, given on the work you have done. So you are like in undergraduate level, I won't be expecting like people would be submitting to very, very high reputed conferences, because I mean, the quality of research at those levels are very, very high, and then it is quite possible that your paper will get rejected from it. So you want to get your paper accepted in the first go. Obviously, you can resubmit after rejection, but you want to get it accepted in the first go. So you'll kind of submit at the level you think your paper is at. The professor or whoever you're working with, your guide, can actually suggest you which venue you can go for. And then you can actually, by venue, what I mean is you can submit to conferences which are like actual physical conferences. I mean, obviously it was virtual here for the COVID phase, but I mean those are actual physical conferences where people attend, and you can actually give talks regarding your work. And you can also present posters summarizing your work, and people like come to you and you can explain them. So that is what conferences are. Journals are in general, like there are publications like I've mentioned here, IEEE, Springer, elsewhere, and all these have like you can journals / magazines, you can call it. So I mean these have like certain, I mean I would say like magazines or journals coming out every 1 month or every 3 months, and these have a recurring deadline, and then you can submit to those. I mean, you will not be invited to give a talk or anything, but I mean that also counts as a good way you can get your papers published. And I wouldn't say like there's a huge difference. I wouldn't say like conferences are difficult to get into, journals are easy. There are good conferences, there are good journals, so getting into both would be difficult. And obviously there are conferences which are not that good and journals which are not that good, and you can submit to either. I mean, so that's the choice, and sometimes there is a deadline issue. I mean, you want to get a paper submitted as soon as possible, so you'll see whatever is coming up first, and what looks like a good conference, you'll, or a journal, you'll just submit it. And probably at the undergraduate level specifically, you probably don't want to think a lot on the venue, right? Also, like I've mentioned a few resources here. So a CFP is like a call for papers. So what that means is, like, as I said, like when I said, say like a deadline is approaching, so you want to, there are deadlines associated with conferences as to when that conference has a deadline till when you can submit a paper in that. So VKCFP is a very good resource, and this is for like all kinds of fields, not just computer science. You can find conferences for mechanical engineering or and like a whole lot of fields in this. And obviously the computer science ones are more in number, but yeah, you can find conferences, workshops, journals, deadlines for a number of conferences, and then you can like sort it by the date and see which one's coming up, and then like find out more about the conference and journal, see if it's relevant for you, and then you can submit, right? And then there's also rankings. As I said, you want, when I say like there's a good conference, a bad conference, so there are rankings associated with conferences. So there are resources where you can check those rankings as well, as I've mentioned. There are rankings associated with the journals as well, which I've again mentioned. So yeah, I mean, this is like the next step. After you've written the paper, you want to get it accepted at a venue. So this would be like the way to go about it. Yeah, I think that is it. I mean, if like people have any questions or you have any questions, I'll sure happy to take it up.
Anyone's actually free in order to unmute themselves in order to ask the questions. If not, then we are having 2 or 3 generic questions that we'll be asking for now. You can unmute yourself and ask now.
Hi, am I audible?
Yeah, audible.
Right, you're audible.
Hi, I'm Soumya, and we didn't focus a lot on the, like, we understood how the structure would be of the paper and how we should read up on what we want to work on, but
Right.
how actually we should carry out, like, I'm interested in core specifically, and like you do have a lot of idea about computer science and stuff, but if I identify a problem that I want to work on, and since I've never done this sort of thing before,
Right.
how should I go about the process of my work?
Right. So the first thing is, after you've identified a topic, go to a professor, I would say, because like doing it independently, especially in a core field, is very difficult. Resources are difficult to find. in the core field. I mean, there are specific textbooks, and yeah. So I mean, the first thing would be to go to a professor who has experience working in that field. You can check out their web page and see all of that. After you have identified a professor you want to work with, go to them and tell them that okay, so this is the topic I want to work in. What should be the steps I should follow? I mean, obviously do some kind of a prior study of your own, have some kind of literature. You should have read it, you should have a good understanding of that topic, and ask him like, okay, so I know that there are some problems, some gaps which exist in this thing, right? I mean, this is also generic for other fields as well. Try to identify, like, when you're doing the prior work, right, try to identify gaps that are there in the current work. I mean, if some algorithm says that, okay, I've improved this on this, or say in your core branch, you can have that, okay, so this process came out later after this process and it was improving on that. You can, if you have done a good amount of study on your own, you can identify things which there is a still gap in, and try to like, even if you can't make an entire full-fledged process, you can actually like point it out and then kind of give potential solutions. I mean, those are also very accepted at research venues, right? I mean, even if you don't have a full-fledged solution right now, but if you can identify a problem which nobody has thought about, or you, and you can actually like present one or two ideas or potential solutions in that field, that is also good. So in short, I would suggest like go to your professor, ask him that, tell him what you have studied, tell him that, okay, so these are some gaps I can identify. So will it be possible to kind of work given the infrastructure that we have, and given the resources that we have? Because there's also a case that sometimes we feel that a project is feasible, but it's actually not. Because I mean, we don't have enough knowledge as to what is required. So yeah, I mean, that would be what I would suggest. But go to your professor, do your study beforehand, ask him if this could be done, and then whatever he tells you to do next, try to do it. And obviously in any research project, try to show your enthusiasm. Okay, so professors in general are busy and they have an understanding which they have accumulated over the years, but you are the one who is reading more the newer work and everything, so you can be the person who can be actually guiding that project and using your professor just as a person to validate what you think is right or not. So yeah, in general, like from a very high level, this is what I can suggest. Yeah, I think, I mean, does that answer your question, or do you have any specific thing you want to ask? Like,
Yeah,
over?
thank you so much.
Where can you explain a bit more about survey papers?
Sure, sure. Yeah, survey paper is actually a very good thing to start about, right? I mean, you can get them accepted as well. It's like a very, I won't say easy, it requires, definitely requires work, but yeah, so what survey papers are is that you take a very specific topic. You don't want to be a very generic, because I mean, when there are like hundreds and thousands of papers, you won't be able to cover that. You want to be kind of very specific on a field, on a topic. And then what you do is like, so I mean, if say if I want to get into a field I have no idea about, so I want to get an idea of like how the field started, what was the initial things that were there in the field, how the initial papers, what they focused on, and then you want to gradually move to, like, over the years, move to like what's the recent work being done. So in survey papers, what you do is you try to identify the different sections of work in that specific topic, and then you say, okay, so for this section, work started from here, and then they proposed this, and then these had obviously had certain gaps. I mean, now you can easily identify gaps if you just read a bit about the papers which were published 30 to 40 years back, right? Because it's very obvious. It sometimes becomes very obvious. So you can say that this was the gaps that were there, and then this was the paper that came after this, and this solved this kind of problem, or something like that. And then try to make it like as much as a comprehensive study as possible. And apart from like just mentioning about those papers, try to like replicate some of the recent algorithms at your end, use some data sets, and then actually show the I mean, as you would have it showing in your own work, show it for the algorithms which already exist, show the results for those algorithms, and then show that, okay, so these papers actually said that this would be improving in this field, this metric, and they actually do. And actually like having experimentation thing in the research in the survey papers is a very good thing to have. That would give a sense of completion. And the goal of survey papers is like to make a person who is not like hasn't read much about the field to like know everything about the field. Since you will start from a survey paper in some field, then if you want yourself to write one, the intention is basically the same. You want some other person who would be reading your paper to get a complete idea of the field. So yeah.
Any more? Okay then, a form would be circulated up in the chat for your feedback, and now I'll be asking some of the more generic questions like what are the most common mistakes that one can make while writing a research paper?
Yeah, so as I already explained, so one of few points would be there from what I explained. I would like to highlight that. So don't focus on just the results. Don't just say that I will improve this part in the algorithm and it will work. Focus on the impact. That is very important. You may feel that, okay, I improved the accuracy, I improved certain metrics. So, I mean, my work should be very, very good, but it's actually not the case. I mean, the academia community in general doesn't focus that much on the results as you might think. They more focus on what problem you identified and how you are saying that you are solving it and how you are actually solving it. The technique, the method section, which I explained, that is like of more importance as to just the results. I mean, even if the results are mediocre or like matching the state of the art, if you can actually have suggested a process which is like very new and has a very novel idea associated with it, that would be appreciated more than a similar algorithm, than a very basic algorithm and doing some minor changes and improving the accuracy. So ideas and story matter a lot. That is one thing. Second thing is obviously like after you've written the paper, right? I mean, this is a generic thing, but ensure that there are no typos or any kind of grammatical mistake. Use Grammarly or any kind of a grammar check system that you want, but ensure that there are no typos. Like typos are like something. I mean, we are from India, so like English is not the first language which is there for the nation, right? But if your reviewers would most probably be from US or UK, so I mean, for them having typos in the text or having like incorrect grammar is like a very big red flag. I mean, they will like kind of, even some reviewers may even reject it right then and there. I mean, they probably won't even read ahead. So I mean, you don't want your paper to get rejected of these small reasons. I mean, I know people and I have seen papers being rejected because of these small reasons, and you don't want to do that. So that is another thing. And third, I would say, like, yeah, choosing weak baselines, weak algorithms to compare to, that is definitely a wrong thing to do. You want, and like also say you are using some other kind of training or conditions for your model, and then using inferior hardware or anything else for the other models. That is also a wrong thing to do. Probably you can get away with it, but I mean, some people, if someone does identify it, then it's very bad. Then obviously copying is bad. You don't want plagiarism. Yeah, I think these are the major things you should take care of. Other than that, like, be true to what you're what you have worked on. Don't have any kind of loopholes in that. Try to be as much robust as possible in like whatever you have done. Yeah, I think those would be generic advice, I would say.
So Shashwat in the chat is asking, is it possible that once we submit the paper, they can ask us to edit or make changes?
Yeah, so this happens on in some of the top A star. I mean, they have levels, right? A star, B, and those kind of things. So this does happen in the very few conferences, I would say. They have a open review thing, and then they can actually like suggest you that not for small mistakes. I mean, they won't say there's a typo here, correct that. They would want some clarifications. I mean, after they read your paper, they could have questions as to like, okay, I didn't understand this. Why did you do this? Or okay, so why is why did you write this equation? I mean, this makes no sense. I mean, they can have all sorts of questions, right? So, I mean, they can ask those questions, and they will also probably not give you time to edit it, but you can explain them, right? Okay, you can give an answer as to, okay, so I was meaning this. Probably you understood it in the wrong way, but I meant this. And if the answer sounds convincing enough, so probably that won't be an issue, and it solves the clarifications. Mostly, I don't think any conference allows you to kind of edit the paper later after submitting, but I mean, clarification questions and all of that is welcome in some of the conferences, but in mostly it's just like a very blank process. I mean, you just submit it, you wait for 2 months, 2.5 months, or whatever is the period when they get the result, and you finally get the result. So I mean, that is also a thing, right? I mean, in between the 2 months, you won't be getting any kind of suggestions, verdicts, or any kind of hints as to what is the progress of paper. It may be possible like after 2 months, your paper gets rejected. So that's why do the most of the effort before submitting and try to ensure that you're submitting the best version possible. Yeah.
Another question, how can we, the people are actually very curious about survey papers.
Okay.
They're asking it once again, how can you publish survey papers? Is the procedure same as that of the research papers?
Yeah, the procedure is, I mean, procedure is obviously the same. I mean, one thing is like if you're writing a survey paper, don't target it for the very top conferences, like the AA star one. I mean, you can definitely go on some A conferences also papers get accepted, but then they should have some kind of a novelty associated with the survey paper as well. So first I'll talk about the general survey paper. So in general survey paper, I don't think the procedure differs much. What you would just be doing, like in place of your algorithm, when I say you are comparing your algorithm with different algorithms out there, you will be not having an algorithm of your own, but you will be saying that, okay, these are algorithms in this field. So I did a thorough experimentation on the recent 5-6 algorithms, and this was the results I got. And try to like, apart from what the papers gave, right? Try to have some intuition, draw some intuition from the results. Like, why do you think this? Okay, so this was a newer paper, this performed better, but why do you think this performed better? If it was the same reasons as they suggested, you can definitely mention that. Okay, so they suggested this, and this actually worked. And yeah, the related work section would probably not be there because the entire paper is a related work. And apart from that, yeah, you won't have the method section, because I mean, what your flow would be like, you'll have an abstract introduction, you'll say this is the problem, and this has been there for quite a while. People have suggested ideas from this domain. You can just mention 5-6 domains in like just one liner. You don't have to go deep into it. And then after that, you can like just write the topic, right? I mean, if once you have a topic, you can write the subtopics which you want to cover on that topic, and then you can, like as I said, you can present an entire timeline in the form in words only. You don't have to like make a chart or something like that, but it should be like a very interesting read. I mean, if a person reads it who doesn't have much experience in it, he should get like a complete idea of the field. So you kind of have to ensure that. And then, so as I said, there won't be any method section. And then after that, try to have an experiment section, a result section, and not exactly result section, you can kind of club them into one, but you can have like a experiment section which you try out all those algorithms on a variety of metrics. I mean, you want to have as many metrics as possible, because once you are seeing like a number of papers from the past, so I mean, they might not be optimizing for this one metric. So I mean, have different metrics, like kind of take a union of all of those metrics. And so in a survey paper, it's easy to write, but I would say it's easier to it's a bit more difficult to kind of do the experiment section, mainly because you have to find out the code from, like you should like try to target those papers who have their code publicly available, try to pull their code and try to make it work. As we know, I mean, that's not a very easy task to do, because not all code repositories are the best in terms of reproducibility. So that would be a task, and then try to have as many metrics as possible. Try to show that, okay, so this method was new, it worked good on this, but it failed on this with an algorithm which was, say, 20 years back. So it's still failing on I mean, it could be rare, but I mean, I'm just saying an example that it could be the case that it's performing good in this area, but bad in that area. And those authors did not show it in that paper that it was performing bad in this area. So you can be the one who is identifying it. And if person wants to like, if a person reads your paper and he like has an application in mind, so he'll know, okay, so this is the latest paper in this field, but it actually does not perform that well. There is a paper which came before it and that actually performs well in that specific domain in which I want to work. So I mean, that is how it will help the people. And like a conclusion future work section wouldn't be typically required. You can just have like a generic summary of whatever you presented. So yeah, I mean, that's about survey papers. And as I said, like some survey papers which can get into top conferences. So what happens in those, like you may not, I mean, you do the entire survey thing, but it can be the case that you don't have, it should be the case that you present something over the existing algorithms. Like try to use those algorithms in a setting which they didn't try out. Like as I said, right, you can, in the future work, people say that, okay, so this was the work I did, and it could be tried on other data sets. So you can try it out on data sets which some other papers used, but some didn't. So kind of have, like, apart from the metrics, try to take a union of the data sets as well, and try those algorithms on the various data sets and see in which data sets it works well and on which it doesn't. I know it's a bit focused on computer science, but I mean, that I have more idea on, so that's why I'm explaining on that. Apart from that, you can also like have certain ideas you could present. I mean, obviously you haven't done a full-fledged work on it, but you can present ideas which you can say, okay, so I think working on this direction could actually improve this paper. You will not do it, but you can actually like present that idea in the paper and say that, okay, so I think like after analysis, so this was a newer paper, it found bad on this, but a older paper performing good in this. So probably if you can kind of have a suggested, I mean, not say just have a combination of those, but kind of suggest a method in which you can kind of combine those approaches, and then it could work better. So I mean, that improves the quality of a survey paper, and then you can also try submitting those kind of survey papers in the top conferences as well. So yeah. Also, like generic one or two things is like one, knowledge of LaTeX is very important in general for writing research papers. So I wouldn't say like you have to develop it separately, but I mean, once you do start writing it, so do expect a small learning curve there. And mostly like some conferences do provide Microsoft Word templates for research papers, but those typically don't look very good, and it's also not very generic. Like not all conferences do that. So learning LaTeX is very important, I would say. One more thing, I had a point. Yeah, and one more thing in generic for like conferences, there's a concept called single blind and double blind. So there you should be very careful when you're submitting papers. So in double blind, what happens is don't include your name in the author section in the beginning. So you just have to like write the title and just start with the abstract and everything. So what the idea of double blind is that the reviewer who is seeing your paper should know where you are from or who you are. I mean, that is kind of the goal, is to kind of prevent any kind of bias towards the higher respected academics in the country, in the world. So yeah, and also usually there's a page limit associated with research papers as well. So you can't be writing a complete essay however long you want. Like in general for like long papers, they have a page limit of say 8 papers in a 2-column format. So you want to adhere to that as well. So when I say you have to improve your writing, so you have to be very concise and very crisp in whenever you write things. You cannot be just writing as in a plain English format. Whatever comes in your mind, you keep writing that. You have to be very careful in kind of summarizing your ideas well, presenting in a very concise, crisp manner, that it makes sense as well. You don't lose out on information, but as well as having it in a very like short manner. So that is also important. I mean, yeah, these are some points I wanted to add. So yeah, if there's any question, I can take that.
Another question has come up. What do we have to do in order to find the gap? And it's saying topic selection oriented. What do we have to do in order to find the gap?
Right. So yeah, I kind of wanted to go up on that. I kind of forgot. So the idea should be like whenever you are doing your prior work study, right? So kind of make notes always, and not just like, okay, so this was the paper, this proposed this. Okay, that should be done in the initial phase, but after that, try to focus on like what were the new things it proposed, what are the advantages you can think of having that process, having that paper, and then also kind of try to have 1 or 2 points. Which are the disadvantages you think? I mean, this does not capture this does not talk about this does not do this, right? And this can, I mean, I can understand, like if it's a first research paper you're reading, you will definitely not get any kind of intuition of the advantages and disadvantages. But I'm saying like if after you've read say 5 papers, you can get an idea of, okay, so this was talking about this was talking about that. So I mean, you can kind of get some kind of connection there, and then after reading about 4 to 5 papers, then you can say that, okay, so this was the advantage for this paper, this was a disadvantage there, which the next paper kind of improved upon. So kind of have a make a note, proper notes for those papers, and also take either visually, some people like to do it visually, some people like to have a mind map in their mind itself. Like kind of have a mind map, okay, so these on this topic there are 5 things that papers usually focus on. The first paper focused on only 2 things, missed out on the rest 3. The next paper kind of worked on all the 5, but it was very mediocre in all of the 5. Or you can have like a certain all those kind of things, right? And then what you want to do is like after you have understanding of, you have broken down your topic into 5-6 points on which you want to focus on, and then you see like what were the papers were focusing on this and what were they missing out on. So that's where the gap identification is happens. It will definitely take time. You will want to read more papers and go through it. And this is like the case when you are doing independently, right? I mean, this is the case when you don't have a guide, you're doing it on your own. So that is why I'm saying that this is difficult and it will take more time. You'll have to read more papers and kind of identify gaps and all. But if the best way at an undergraduate level is what I would say, go to your professor, ask him like, I want to work on this, and be sure to like go to a professor who has experience working on this either currently or in the past, and ask him that I was working on this, I have read these papers, I you can say like I've identified gaps, or you can say like I'm trying to identify gaps and all, and what can be like a good problem to work on this in this area. So I would say that would be the best way for an undergraduate to go about it. After you have graduated and you're still interested in research, or for higher studies, the MS or PhD students, Master or PhD students, for them, I would say like creating a mind map for identifying the gaps and like having pointers on what papers miss on and what papers accomplish. That could be like the best way to go about identifying gaps, I think.
Okay, sir. Now I'll be presenting up the screen.
Okay.
Just give me a moment. Started to present it, I think.
Yeah, let's see it.
Okay. So, sir, from the Students Counseling Services IIT BHU, we are thanking you for this great session. It has been a quite wonderful journey. You have explained us all the steps. It's been very meaningful for every person. You might have inspired many who was not up into the process of writing the research paper. We sincerely thank you for coming in once again in order to give the contribution to this wonderful institution. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Karan, for inviting, and like huge thanks to you. You have been very patient the entire process because I know I didn't have time initially, and the slides and all which you worked on. I mean, that was tremendous effort. I'd really like to thank you on that. Yeah, a huge, great work by the entire team, and specifically you, Karan. It was very good.
Okay. Thank you, sir. We'll be leaving for now.
Sure. Thank you for inviting. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.